Together we rise. This is a podcast, modcast, right? We're developing something new. We have some wonderful some guests with us, and I'd like to do some introductions so that the people watching can know who is in the conversation that we're having in celebration of National Foster Care Awareness Month, trying to raise the visibility and awareness of this population's narrative. So I'll give my first introduction. I'm Jared Pratt, Director of Student Success for the Pratt Center here at Cleveland State University, facilitator of the Sullivan Decker Scholarship Program, and other access pathways to students who have been touched by foster care. I'm joined by a wonderfully diverse panel of guests that I'd like to, in no particular order, ask to introduce themselves so that you all who are joining with us today in the virtual world can know who we're having a conversation with.
Hello, my name is Iris Nera-Smith. I am a research associate at the Cleveland Clinic Learner Research Institute. I've been there for approximately 5.5 years.
Okay. My name's Lori Scott, and I'm a realtor / multi-hyphenate. I came into this space as a licensed social worker. I still hold my license. I've also done extensive work with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District as well as a few NASA education programs. So I have been engaging with the work, as Jared said, since around 2006 before the Pratt Center came to be. And then I was a mentor around 2013 through 2015, and I'm just happy to be here to engage in the discussion and learn from others and contribute to the conversation.
I am Devi Sukanya Perchella. I'm from India. I'm doing my master's in information systems and I work as a navigator in Pratt Center.
I'm Jacob Burns. I'm a sophomore Sullivan Decker scholar, and I'm currently majoring in information systems, and I'm just here to participate in the conversation and hopefully get some good feedback.
Hi, I'm Yi Peng Poon. I'm working at Cleveland Clinic, same as Iris. Been here for 3 years. No such a special day. Yeah, it's good to be here.
And welcome. We just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. This is an informal conversation around some of the themes that we talk about daily, and we're looking at National Foster Care Awareness Month and thinking about what does a young person in today's society, dealing with all of the sort of global factors that we've been dealing with coming out of a pandemic, looking at a shifting global economy, looking at crises happening on our domestic shores as well as abroad, and sort of at an 18-year-old who's in care by that could feel somewhat overshadowed, right? And so we want to make sure that we're providing something that is specifically speaking to them. Hopefully our young people are thinking about coming to college, and if not, thinking about at least what happens after the transition. And so this conversation is about from the perspective of young people who have been touched by care and for practitioners who work with them, how can we better prepare young people to engage in success pathways post foster care, right? And so I think that's probably a place, as you heard, we did the creed, and there are lines in the creed that really resonate to me about that my success, my education, those are my companions, and that nothing can separate me from those. And so how do we help our young people be prepared to engage in opportunities where success can be the outcome? And so I sort of put that question out to the group, and we really want to keep the conversation in that appreciative lens of, in a perfect world, what could we do to make the world more perfect for our people who are getting ready to enter it, right? We recognize that there's some systemic factors that we can't change, but what can we do? What is the possible, right? And so I sort of throw that out to our panel to sort of ask in that regard, if you are approaching aging out, what would you have wanted to know, right? And if you are supporting youth who are preparing to age out, what could we teach? What could we show? What can we expose that enhances the quality of that transition?
Yes, and I think, I'm glad you brought that up, Jared, because I think success looks different for different people, right? And we all come with a frame of reference. We learn things from people around us, from the moment we learn how to walk, right? So we're constantly taking the environment in, and we're trying to learn, what does success look like? The people around me, are they modeling success? Do I model success to people around me, right? As a kid, when you're growing up, do you have younger siblings or younger individuals that you're around? And it's all about, I guess, immersion and learning from who's around you, who's pouring into you at the time. I guess I can share from just my experience. I had my parents who poured into me, and my mother always took me and my older brothers, because I come from a family of 6, to the library. We didn't come from much, right? There were 6 of us in a 1,000 square foot home. It was very tiny. And my dad, he injured himself 85 and he couldn't work. So my mom was the sole breadwinner. And what she did to supplement our education was take us to the library. And now I have this affinity to want to learn. I got my BS in biochemistry. I got my PhD in biochemistry. I'm working at Cleveland Clinic with my colleague here, and I'm constantly looking back on the opportunities that I was afforded to pay it back, to help others. I strongly and firmly believe that too much is given, much is expected. And I always try to pour that into other individuals. We're not always going to have the same outlook, and we're not going to take the same steps or the same path. But if I can offer some wisdom or some guidance to the current position that someone is in, then I've done my job.
Absolutely.
Right? If I know that someone is looking at pursuing some type of career or education in STEM, oh, well, what are you interested in? Are you interested in pursuing math or science? Do you want to get a BS? Do you want to get a PhD? How can I pour into you to get you to the next step?
Absolutely. And so I think it creates a very interesting conversation when you have someone who has resources, right? In what ways are most effective in approaching young people who have been touched by care? And I'll sort of ask Jacob to take the lead on that, because I have this help that I want to give, right? How can I make sure that the help that I want to give is transferred in a way that it can be received in the spirit that I want to give it in?
Well, I think my formal opinion, I would say, is everyone has a different experience, and everyone, feeds off of feedback in very different ways. And some can take it offensive, while others can take it as almost a sense of inspiration. And I think, me personally, seeing people succeed in ways that were, around my community, definitely inspired me. It told me like, hey, if they could do it, I'm able to do it. And getting feedback from them, really, like, that what pretty much like brought me here, to be able to like take hold of my dreams in certain ways. And it's harder to take advice from others that you feel like aren't even a part of your community, or rather they haven't even stepped foot in like shoes that you've been in. And over the years I've become more okay with it. I've opened myself up more. But I would say that to a lot of people I came across, if you didn't really show them that you were in those shoes, or you even around them, they won't accept it, and they'll just take it as something that they can't follow,
Absolutely. And thank you. And I think your comments are very brave. And so we also, I thank you for your authenticity and you lending that authenticity to our conversation that we hope to be able to steer to help a larger audience, because it takes that type of collaboration, right? And there's a social capital in you sharing your story that we acknowledge and we recognize and we value and we appreciate. So thank you for the willingness to share that. It's also one of the reasons why we're intentional about asking international students, international perspectives into our conversation, because I think there's a shared dissonance that can sometimes be relatable in terms of figuring out how do I make sure that I'm connected. Am I connected to the right people in the right places? And that connection is sort of more difficult for me, because not only am I trying to get connected to the resource, but I don't share the same common experience, right? And so I got to build my own lens. At the same time, I got to manage and maintain the connection that I'm trying to establish. And so if anyone would like to speak to that, and so some of the skills that maybe that has called you to sort of hone in on, and how we can recommend other young people look at those experiences to take away value.
Well, I guess since I'm not from here, so that is definitely something that I can really relate to. Of course, one thing I think we should be open to, everything. You shouldn't have a fixed set because you are being brought up, you are being trained, or you are being, educated this way. So you should open and, listen to people, mingle with people, and do not close yourself to the clique that you're so used to, because it's always, when you're familiar with a group of people, that is very comfortable. You want to be with them, but that will sort of block you from learning and accommodating and familiarize yourself with a new environment, new culture, new thinking, new perspective. I think the first thing it should be like be more open, willing to take the first step, take the initiative to meet with people. Like myself, I have no idea what I can offer today, but I'm willing to take that step now. That's why I'm here, to see what can I help and how can I learn from that help me to give back to the society. So I think that is the first step that we should be doing. Take the first step out of your comfort zone, learn and be more open-minded. At least that's something that I think it will definitely help in the long run. And slowly get to know people, mingle with people, like you say, be in a community that can grow with you together and help each other. Because you cannot help yourself, you can only help each other and be with them together and grow together. That helps a lot. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I strongly agree with you. I feel like we shouldn't ever keep any restrictions to ourselves. No, I'm only going to be this way and I'm going to be doing only these things. Every day the world is evolving and we also should be evolved with the world. We have to travel with the flow. And that's what I have learned in this Pratt Center and with all the experience I have had here. We always, look at the world in not only in our perspective, we have to be in other people's shoes and try to understand what they're going through and, trying to understand others. Then I feel the world can become a better place to live when you try to understand other people's perspectives. Not only just the look, narrow-mindedness.
I'm sure we fall.
Yeah.
We will bang our head on the wall, but that's the process of learning, and we will grow and we become a better person as we learn from people.
Everyone should try to understand the mistakes in a good way. It's okay to do a mistake. It's okay to have a bad day.
I agree with that.
Yes, and always, try to take mistakes in a good way, and they are very great lessons. Every mistake, in my personal life, every mistake I consider it as a great opportunity to learn something better or to safeguard myself. Better ways, whatever it is. So these days, the current youth, if they do something, they're being in extreme guiltiness and oh my god, I have done this thing, and like kind of embarrassment. That is not that much needed according to me. It's okay. Everyone will have a bad days. Everyone will have bad experiences. It's okay to have everything in our life, and life is like a rainbow.
We talk about how a bad day is not a bad life, right? And especially when in the sort of the context of foster care, because so much of the life that you're dealing with until you either aged out of that system or been placed somewhere in a more permanent environment, that the results of the circumstances you're dealing with are not by your choices, right? And so confronting your own potential versus confronting the choices and consequences of others are two separate actions, which sometimes get compounded into one activity, and you're the person that's dealing with that. And so as the director of the program here, one of the things we talk about often is how do we sit in the dissonance of our own success and our own failure, right? How do we confront our own potential? I want to do that. I attempted to do it. I wasn't as good as I thought I was, right? And people saw that. People saw me fail, right? But I now want to know. I gotta be sensitive to taking the correction and taking the feedback. And that isn't sometimes an attack on me, which is what it can feel like, because I tried and I didn't meet the standard, but the feedback is actually going to help me meet it. And so that's a skill you're talking about, in which you're able to hear that and then be able to say, okay, then what about myself? Do I need to then go back and reflect on, or go back and change or develop? What do I need to sort of invest in to have different results? And I think one of the things we're talking about for young people, we recognize that college isn't the only pathway, right? And so when we're thinking about being prepared for that adult transition, the one of the reasons why we wanted to have this sort of diversity in the conversation is because, as was said earlier, success comes in many different forms. And so maybe for me, the most successful thing that I need to do right now is think about housing. Is think about purchasing my first home. I think about my financial security. To think about things things that would not be a concern if I was only going to school, right? And I was in an environment where I had a support system of a family and of resources outside of myself. But I'm navigating this by myself, right? And so how do I, who I don't have it within me, find the resources outside of me, and then also deal with the fact that it may require me to change, right? And so I think that sort of intersection is a messy process in which you can't fail neatly, and it's okay to sort of to make a mess but not stay in the mess, right? To sort of bump your head, as you said, but then recognize that was a moment, that wasn't the entire lifespan, and get up from that. So I'd be curious to know if anyone on our panel has had experiences like that in their undergraduate or graduate experience where it didn't work out like I thought it was going to. You know, I went in and I thought I knew this material. I thought I was the smartest person in the room, and then the light came on, but now you're still here, right? And so what happened, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I'll take that question, and I actually want to just chime off of some of the things that have been said. I hear comments about self-reflection, about getting out of your comfort zone, about making sure you're meeting different people as you continue on your road. And what I'll say to that personally is I think self-reflection is also important in meeting new people and getting out of your comfort zone. It is something that I've been doing over the last couple of years, trying to move to my next step. I took a pivot in my career. I did about 15 or so years in social services and education. Mind you, those things were in tandem. I've always had like 3 jobs, so I gotta go to work. And at one point, I decided to add real estate to that repertoire. That was around 2012, so about 10 years now. And I just think that turning the corner on that, it speaks to a lot of the responses here. Meeting new people, asking questions that you never would have asked before, or framing things from a way that you see them. Hey, what was your experience? I saw you accomplish this and I thought it was amazing. Can you tell me about that? What I've learned is that people always want to talk about the things that they've accomplished. And there's a message in that for you, you know, while they're being affirmed within themselves of, I did do this thing, and these are the steps that I took, but these are also the roadblocks that I hit on that. And now I want to share it with you because I can pull you up and help you be a better person in your road. Another thing that I'll say is, along with affirmation and reflection, writing. I'm not the person who wants to sit down and journal. I will confess, I'm sorry. My coaches will let you know that I'm the person who will not have the assignment when they tell me to do some journaling. But it's one of those things where I have to force myself to sit down and write down the things that have happened today because it'll help you move forward. You mentioned a little bit about trials, and when you make a mistake, it's not that big. You can go on and move on. I think that's one of the lessons that I've taught myself through others, listening to others, is when you write things down, write your mistakes down, you can forget about it before you go to bed at night because you've emptied your brain, you know, and by the time you wake up the next morning, you can move on to, you know, the next thing that you need to do, and you can be great at that. And so now I'll transition and go back to Mr. Pratt's question about, you know, bumps on the road and housing and what happened in our academic experiences. So I spent my undergraduate at The Ohio State University, and I tell people that I've been going to college since I was in 2nd grade, which is actually the truth. So I have a brother who's 3.5 years older than me in age, 4 years in grade, and he was a part of the Young Scholars Program, which allowed them to start going to college in grade 6. I was in grade 2 at that time. And so that's how I started going to college in 2nd grade. And that's how I knew Ohio State was going to be the place for me. But when I got there, I realized that I didn't necessarily know how to navigate the landscape. I didn't know who my advocates were, who my champions were, and who would help me in those processes that I needed, you know, to get feedback on. And those were things that, you know, as you were in the younger grades, high school, you sort of had that core group of teachers. And in our district, Cleveland Metropolitan, it was very close-knit. And the teachers knew the teachers that we were coming from. So they were passing names along and they were making connections as we were going to our different schools. And so they knew what paths we were on. They knew what support to give us. But once you go to college, you have to rebuild that network. But that's something that a young person doesn't necessarily realize. And so I found that that was one of the issues for me. And specifically, I'll speak to my transition of moving off campus. I found myself couch surfing for a semester because I didn't have the money to pay my deposit for my rent, or without my deposit and rent. And so I ended up couch surfing for a semester. And luckily for me, the friendship groups that I've had over time have always been sort of my familial space. And so I was able to ask a friend, like, hey, can I stay in your 1-bedroom apartment, which was smaller than this little cube that we're in? And we literally made it happen. She's like, no problem, I understand, it happened to me. But I also think back to, I had the resources around me to understand what that process was, but I didn't reach out to them. And so moving forward, I always made sure I asked many questions before I was jumping out there to assert my independence or to move forward to that next step. And sometimes that seems like a challenge, or it seems like contradictory to wanting to do it on your own, but you can save yourself a little bit of the challenge and the heartache of moving forward if you just sort of use your resources. So I guess that's the point of me bringing that up.
I can't agree more, because if you know what it takes for you to, prepare yourself for the next step. For example, I have the same thing. I stay in a dorm, and I don't have the resources to move out independently, unfortunately for myself. But how do I keep on staying in the dorm, making sure that I could have a space, in the dorm? So I need to know what does it take. So I'm kind of lucky because I have senior and friends that I can ask around or to tell you, like those system, brother and sister kind of system that you have. And they actually tell you, like, if you want to stay in the dorm throughout your bachelor studies, you have to be active, you have to join curriculum, you have to accumulate points, you have to, different, not just sports, but academic and like varieties of clubs that you need to join, and that will help you to accumulate points, be leadership on some of them. So that's what I did, and that helped me. But of course I struggled at the beginning because I need to sort of understand where I can get all those resources, how and what kind of clubs I need to join. But you're absolutely right. You really need to know what you can get out of the system in order to help you to do what you think you need to do or want to do. Again, that's right.
Tapping into the specific resources that help you achieve the goals that you set for yourself. And sometimes we don't know those goals, so it's asking around, like you shared, Lori, and knowing who to go to, who are the people around you that you admire or you look up to, or that have been investing and pouring into you. Ask them, and they're more than happy to help you find your way. You never stop learning. You never stop needing guidance, and it's very important to be able to know when to speak up, right? To know what it is that you need and where to seek it from.
I think don't be afraid to ask questions, even though it's a silly question. I remember one professor told me there's no such thing as silly question. Right? So just ask. Every question is crucial and important to you if you.
So since you are joining our conversation, welcome enough to the panel, and so I'd just like to get your perspective on, since you've been now at CSU for a couple of semesters, your experience as a student navigator, and sort of that word navigator, as we're talking about experiences, as you are navigating multiple parts of your journey. So just some insight in terms of what your experience has been.
So it's I've only been here for like 6 months, and I've gotten to interact with a lot of scholars in here as I work as a navigator in here. So I would like to tell you all about an incident. So I was a very hard worker, and it took a lot of hard work for me to get to here. So I believe in not wasting time. I believe in making the most of the resources. So when I came in here and I saw that the scholars were being given I feel that it is a privilege for them to be able to, that someone is investing so much in their career, and then I thought that it was their responsibility for them to be making the most of it. So although they work very hard, they're very good students, but I went up to Mr. Pratt one day and I told him that 1-2 hours they're not that concentrating in their academics, and Mr. Pratt told me this one incident which changed my perspective, which changed my thinking. He said that we're trying to build a family in here because they do not have that, and that is something that they're lacking. I was able to work hard and get here because I had that family push. I had that support coming in from the family, which they do not have. So since then, my entire perspective of success has changed. So here we are trying to build family, build relations. It's not only about education, it's about life skills that we are trying to build as a family. So that is something that I've learned, and it would impacted my thinking in a very big way.
And I think that's so important because the fluidity of the skill is not just the lesson, right? It's how the lesson informs how you interact with the next skill, how you interact with the next lesson. So I learned that, right, and it changed my perspective. But that's because the same thing happened to me. I remember literally coming in teaching in the first 2 summers for the Sullivan Decker program and telling my mother at the time, Dr. Pratt, I don't know if they're taking me seriously, right? And because my expectation was that they would meet me in the space the same way that they meted her. And she said, why would you think that, right? Why would you presume that? And I thought, well, because I'm standing here and I'm teaching, and not realizing that students don't care what you teach until they know that you care. And so first, for our students, that context is so important. Let me show you what I want you to learn. And so I stopped teaching and I started learning, and I became the lead learner. So I don't want to just be the director of the program and tell you where to go. I want to join you on a journey that helps you transform. And in that transformation, there are going to be some points where you just got to be flexible. I did not think that I was going to have to do this in order to get there, right? But now that I recognize this, I cannot not do this. All right, so there's a prerequisite to a class. I don't like science classes, right? And I don't want to have to do that, but it's a prerequisite. And so I can't not do well in the science class because I'm not invested in it, because that's going to inform how I perform in the next class. And so how we do one thing is how you do everything. And then learning that, right? Because that's not how I thought before. So some experience happened where I was able to change and I was able to evolve. And I think sometimes we feel like I have to hold on to my identity, because if I change, then that means I'm going to lose who I am. But the question that we started this conversation with, and we'll come back to sort of give everyone an opportunity to give a final point is yes, we started this, right? But ultimately, what do we want to be, right? What is the end goal? And so I can't base my experience now on what I was. I base my experience on what I want to be. And that allows me room to be able to grow, to make the mistakes, to evolve, because I'm not holding myself as who I was accountable. Right? I'm trying to become something, and in trying to become something, there's going to be some shifting. There's going to be some mistakes. Somebody's going to watch me fail, and I can't get so consumed with that I forget. But look at how many successes we've had, and we celebrate the micro successes the same way we do the big ones. And every day that a student decides, dealing with some of the things that young people are dealing with, to come into the center and to sit down and to apply some time to trying to become better, to trying to become smarter, to performing better, then whether they maximize that moment or not, I've got to appreciate that moment could have been spent anywhere else on this campus or off of this campus. And so I got to appreciate that, no, I didn't get everything I wanted from that moment, but I appreciate the commitment to the moment. And if I can get that moment, I can get another one, and I can get another one. And enough of those moments compounded together starts to build that capacity for success, because we really have to have a capacity for it. Because if I'm successful here, then I'm going to get elevated to another level that's going to have even more challenges. It's going to be even harder. And so I can't look at my success as I conquered that, I'm done, right? Because really conquering that success, as someone once told me, the top of one mountain is just the bottom of another. So now I'm here, I've graduated, now I got to think about, okay, now what's next? So I would like, if we could, for everyone to sort of if you're going to take one thing away from this conversation, right, what would that be? And if you wanted to leave one thing with a young person who right now is 14, 15, 16, 17, and thinking about what life is going to look like on the other side of that mountain, what's one thing we'd like to leave with them? And I'll open that up for everybody to sort of give their final thoughts.
Sure. I think one thing I would say that I take away from this entire conversation is that, the life skills that you're learning and you'll be continuing to learn as you progress, you should always, when you come across other individuals, you should always esteem them greater than yourself, right? You should always have respect for yourself, but have respect for others too. You can learn from one another. And Yi and I were talking about that as well. When you are engaging with other people, don't just think about what you can gain. Don't let it be a selfish endeavor. What can you give that person, right? It's a mutual benefit relationship. Another thing I want to say is that, and you made a really good point about failures. You can't have success without failure. It's impossible, right? And you have to use that failure as a platform for your next step. And I really, truly believe in that. I've had many failures. I have had this ideal where this is what my life should look like. Once I get my BS, this is what my life looks like. And this is the path I'm going to take. Really narrow-minded, but I took a detour here and a detour here and there. I'm not your conventional student. I went back at age 38 to get my PhD, to finish my BS and get my PhD, right? So, when you're looking at that, don't say, oh, well, Susie or Bill, they did this. Never compare yourself to anybody. That's the worst thing to do. What are the gifts you have? What are the gifts you can give? And how does it lead you to your destination?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. So, one thing that I could learn from this entire conversation is everybody would have different journeys. They have different, they've led different lives. So it doesn't really mean your perception of success should be what that is how there should be. So we should be more. I believe now that I've learned to step into other people's, step into their foot and see life from their perspective and try and understand as to why success is different for them.
Well, I think one thing that I really learned from this is that you make your own identities. You is who you are, and you should believe in that. And I think that's why I'm getting the definition of each and every individual is very unique, but yet we are in a community and grow together. That's very crucial. And the thing that I think I would like to sort of share here would be dare to dream. Always dream.
Yes.
You will succeed one day, whether your dream is dream A, dream B, but always dare to dream and catch your dream or make it something out of that.
Absolutely.
Never give up, never give in.
Absolutely.
And be true to yourself. I think that's very important.
Thank you. And I think and have the audacity to dream big, right? And don't be limited by what. And sometimes I know what I want for myself, but I'm afraid to share because if I tell them that I want that, then they're gonna look at me. But it doesn't. Sometimes when I was young, I used to express all the time how I wanted to be the director of some program on some college campus somewhere. And while my life has worked out in this way, it's not something that is lost on me that I'm also following the footsteps of an educator who heard me say that as a child. And so part of her mission was always, how do I create access for him, right? And so I'd like to, my final thoughts in terms of would just be consistent with what is recited in the creed, which is the first line, which is society will draw a circle that shuts me out. But my superior thoughts, not my connections, not my assets, not my resources. The first thing I have to do is recognize that I have the power within me to change and influence my external circumstance. That's first. And then the thing that I would leave with a young person would be the next step, which is the last line of the creed, which is, this is my time and my place. And I accept the challenge. And that success is not going to be given to me, right? I have to accept the fact that there's going to be some challenges, and I accept the fact that it's going to be my responsibility to navigate that. But when that happens, as the creed also says, my success, my education, those are my companions that no misfortune can depress and no crime can destroy. And so we'd like to thank you for joining us this afternoon as we did our first taping of the Together We Rise podcast. We plan to have 3 other installations of this which will air concurrently throughout the month of May in celebration again of National Foster Care Awareness Month. I'd like to thank all of my guests and my panelists for joining us. I think the conversation has been rich, and I hope that while this conversation has certainly benefited us all, I hope that this video finds its way into some young person's mind, into their schema, and so that when they may not have the context of the people around them to talk to, they'll just watch this on repeat, right, and have a conversation with somebody else's aunt, somebody else's uncle, somebody else's cousin, because we are now a part of your network and your family as well. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. To all of our production crew and assistants, to our student navigators and scholars, we say thank you for your experience. All right, and we'll see you next time.